Well, welcome everyone, and thanks again for joining me on this wonderful November evening. I want to welcome all of you who are joining from all around the world, and yeah, just to remind everyone how honored I am to be able to do this and to be able to offer in this way. A couple announcements before we begin tonight. You're welcome to visit my website, craigholiday.com, for details about the next online satsang. The next one will be mid-December. Also, there's information about scheduling a session with me, whether it's to do some counseling work or some spiritual mentoring work. Also on the website is a link with all kinds of meditations, resources, for those of you who are interested in engaging the teachings on a deeper level. So check that out. Also, I'm supposed to remind everyone this satsang is supported by donation, and there's a PayPal link on my website, and you're welcome to offer a donation. And it's helpful to support these teachings, and so that I'm able to do more of this in the future. And so for those of you who offer, whether it's through offering your heart, offering your silence, or offering financial support, all of it will go to the greater good. So thank you for that. So in light of this last weekend's recent events in Paris, I received all kinds of emails from people, especially in Europe, who had questions about what was going on and how they should respond, and what we can do, how we can get involved. And so there's all these different kinds of questions going on, and of course there's a lot of pain associated with such tragic events. And so I thought we'd start this evening just through having a prayer. So you're welcome to close your eyes. And we're just inviting the presence of God into our lives. Inviting the presence of that which is good, that which is higher, to descend her grace upon this earth, and to bless those who are deeply affected by this pain. And we're asking that God not only bless those in Paris, but those in Beirut, those in Iraq, those in Israel and Palestine, those in Syria, those fleeing war zones, and also bless those who are receiving the refugees. And we ask that your grace fill our hearts and lead us and guide us to act in alignment with your truth, with your wisdom. We ask for your help with patience and understanding. We ask you to guide us forward in compassion and truth and love. We ask you to especially bless the families of those who are directly affected in all this war and all this suffering throughout our globe. And especially those who lost sons or daughters, young children. And we ask you to deeply take care of them, to receive their souls into heaven. And I invite you all just to continue to open to something greater, than your own egoic nature, something greater than your own egoic mind. Open to something higher than the status quo of where most individuals live from. And so as we sit here this evening, as I go into, all these questions and emails that I've received, I invite you to listen to the words, but also to open to something greater, to be willing to receive, something much higher, whether that be a descent of light, from heaven above, or opening to your own higher nature, to that place of goodness and innocence and compassion within your own self. And so I invite you just to join me in that. And so, of course, this last weekend I actually went out of town, and I traveled across the big open desert to see my teacher Ajay. He was teaching in Sedona, and so I left early Friday morning and had a nice day of just driving across the desert, opening to the vastness and the emptiness of the desert. And to me, it's such a relief to open in this way, to let go of the world, to let go of my incredibly busy life, my busy work that I do, and just to take some time to be in peace. And it's so wonderful for me to drive out across the desert, and I don't really listen to the news much, but when I got there and got to the retreat site, and my teacher began to talk about the recent terrorist attacks, which I think just happened maybe a couple hours earlier, and he spoke about what great pain it would cause so many people. And inside, what I noticed is there was just part of me that just felt such a pain, such a sadness for the world. Such suffering is happening. And so I went on, and I had a fairly nice weekend, hanging out in Sedona, which is a deeply spiritual place. It's a beautiful place to visit. But when I got home, Monday morning, I looked on the computer. I noticed there was everyone was writing and talking about the terrorist attacks that happened in France. Other people were arguing about, there was another terrorist attack that happened in Beirut. And people were saying, well, why don't we care about those, that were hurt in Beirut? And then people were speaking about, the war in Syria, the war in Iraq, and, it got political really quick. If you looked on the news, you saw the different political parties, in the United States and the political parties in Europe all fighting with each other about how to respond. How shall we respond to this terrible act of violence? And so, it's a great question for any of us who are awake in this world, who are conscious beings, who are here on earth and who are willing to take part, in this thing called being human. How shall we respond? One of the things that I can remember as a young kid is we'd sit down every night, and this was before cable news. We'd watch the news once a day. At dinner time, my father would sit down and we'd watch Dan Rather every night. And every night I remember listening to the stories of the Israelis and the Palestinians, fighting over territory, fighting over religious beliefs. And I remember that, the first time I heard it, and then it seemed like I heard it again and again each night. And this went on for years. And then I noticed it went on for decades. And now I'm noticing a similar thing, with the United States and Iraq, the United States and Syria and in the West, the Islamists and Syria and the Western world, and, all the pain that's going on between the warring factions. And it just seems like it causes so much pain, so much distress. One person throws a rock at us and we throw a rock back at them. And then they throw 2 rocks at us and then we throw 3 rocks back at them. It seems as if it's this never-ending cycle of suffering, of pain, of insanity. It's it breaks my heart to see this over and over again. And so I got these questions, and one of the first questions that I got was and I made the question short, so I didn't really copy them word for word, but the question was something like this: in light of Paris, in light of Beirut, the wars in Iraq and Syria, and the refugee crisis, what can we do to help the world in times of terrorism and war and inequality? That's a great question for any of us, who want to be spiritually active in the world, spiritually engaged. For most of history, those interested in spirituality simply transcended this world. They left this world. They went to the monastery, they hid out in the church, and they focused on their own enlightenment. But if we only focus on ourselves, we become very self-centered individuals, and nothing in the world changes. So in this age, an age where we're beginning to be deeply integrated in our divinity and in our humanity, in this age where non-duality is giving birth here on earth, is this opportunity for us to be deeply engaged, to wake up not only to the God within ourselves, but the God in others, the God within each and every one of us. And so when something terrible like this happens, the question is how do we respond? How do we respond? And we can ask all kinds of people how to respond. If you ask Donald Trump how to respond, he'll say, well, we should nuke them off the face of the earth. If you ask someone else how to respond, we should send drones in. If we ask someone else, if we ask the terrorists, what do you guys think? They say, well, we don't like you, and we think the end of the world is coming, and so we're ready to fight. But if we're going to live in a spiritually awakened way, we have to ask ourselves, is what I'm doing, is it sane? Is it an act of love? Is it coming from truth? Will it lead to a greater evolution in this world? Or will it lead to more suffering? If we want to get off this wheel of samsara, this wheel of pain, this wheel of just repetitive heartache, we have to be willing to respond differently. And so in times of stress, can we ask our heart how to respond? See, normally in times of stress, we ask our emotions how to respond. If someone comes up and punches me in the stomach and I ask my emotions, how should I respond? My emotions will say, well, you punch them back if you think it will get you anywhere, or you'll run like hell if they're bigger than you. That's our emotional world. It tends to be fight or flight, reactive. And tends not to have much wisdom in it. When we listen to our emotional mind, it will lead to more pain, more samsara in the world. If we want the world to change, if we want to be on the side of growth, on the side of evolution, on the side of peace, we have to be willing to be courageous and respond with love, respond with compassion, respond with peace. And by peace, I don't mean just sitting back and doing nothing. But can we be creative in our peace? Can we be active in our peace? Can we take the time to slow down in our reactions and come into our heart and ask our heart, how shall I respond? And to listen to our heart. During World War II, perhaps the highest response was fighting Hitler. Perhaps it was. Perhaps that was a movement of the heart. But in this moment, can we be courageous enough to see what is the highest response? If the highest response for us is to fight, then by all means fight. If our highest response is to be peaceful and love, then how can we love in a creative way? If the highest response is to set clear and consistent boundaries, can we do that? If the highest response is something new, something that has never been spoken of on the earth, can we listen to that? When Gandhi came into this world, and the British controlled his country, he listened to his heart, and a new idea of peaceful, nonviolent resistance came forward. And he was able to defeat the greatest empire at that time on the planet with nonviolent resistance. And what a beautiful thing it was. What a wonderful thing it was. It was able to come through him because he was courageous enough to listen to his heart. And so the same question, the same challenge is here for us. Can we listen to the highest thing which is in our heart? The highest thing may be accepting refugees into our country, into our homes, into our towns. The highest thing may be offering aid. Or the highest thing may be, sending the warships. But if we're going to live in an awakened way, one thing is for certain, we must be willing to let go of our past reactions. We must be willing to let go of our own pain and our own reactivity and be willing to come into the truth of our heart and allow it to guide us forward. And see what it says, see how it responds. And so this is a beautiful question. I got this so many different ways. Another question that someone sent me was, as he said, Craig, can you tell me that all is well in the world? And because they say, so often, Craig, you talk about this, that everything is okay. What do you mean by this? That everything is absolutely okay. How can you say that? How can you teach that? Essentially is what they're asking me when there's so much chaos, pain, and suffering in the world. It's a great question. It's a paradoxical question. It's a question that I get, pretty much on a daily basis. Is how can you say that everything is okay, that all is well? And so, what I'm speaking about when I say that all is well is that if we stop just right now in this moment, if we feel into the goodness of our heart, the fundamental aliveness of our being, if we look out at the natural world, if we look out at the night sky, if we look out at the hugeness and the aliveness of the ocean, we will notice in our direct experience that all is well, all is good, all is absolutely and completely okay. And I mean this in an absolute sense. When I woke up the other morning, I woke up, to about 6 inches of snow. The whole world, as far as I could see, was covered in white. I know some people live in deserts, and some people live in Miami and in New York City and Costa Rica and Guatemala and Europe, and perhaps it's not snowing in those places, but where I woke up, the whole world was white. It was pristine. It was beautiful. I took a walk outside. I felt the cool air, blowing on my skin. I looked at a tree and I saw the wind hit the tree, and the snow just gently fell off the tree, and the sun hit all the snowflakes all at once. It made this beautiful sparkle. As the snow fell to the ground. And yes, all is well in the world. All is good in an absolute sense. This is a world of absolute beauty, absolute divinity. And yet, bombs had exploded a couple of days before in Paris, a couple of days before that in Beirut, and probably on a daily basis, unfortunately, in Syria, in different war zones in northern Africa. And suffering had taken place and was continuing to take place. And so there's this great paradox of, yes, there is pain in the world. I would be a fool and arrogant to not acknowledge that. But simultaneously, that pain, that suffering is happening, is arising in this vast empty space. This vast empty space of life, of divinity, of goodness. And I say all is well is because I am awake to the goodness of the world. I see in my direct experience that the goodness, the spaciousness, the openness, the peace is far greater than the suffering and pain of this world. But to really know this in your heart, it can't just be an idea. It can't just be, you can't just take my word for it. You have to be willing to stop and ask yourself, is peace right here in this moment? Is it here? And it's a question you feel yourself into. Can you feel the spaciousness and the peace in this room? Can you feel the aliveness looking out of your eyes right now? Can you connect in this way to this greater experience which I'm speaking of? Can you connect to the place within you, the space of awareness which will outlive every experience you will ever have? I've visited war zones before and seen incredible pain and incredible suffering. I've sat with the victims of brutality and rape and genocide. And despite the pain that they experience, the overwhelming pain, what I saw was, it breaks my heart to admit this, the absolute beauty and divinity of their hearts, the absolute beauty and divinity of their nature. I could see this just pouring out of their eyes. So when I say all is well in the world, I'm speaking of this space. this presence which is beyond all pain. It doesn't deny pain. It can fully acknowledge the pain. Yesterday morning on my way into the office, I was listening to the news, and I heard about this this Frenchman. He was yelling at the local authorities. He said, "Tell me where my daughter is. Where is my daughter?" And the authorities were doing this terrible job of identifying the bodies who who had died the days earlier, and there was about 20 bodies left that they could not identify. And as I heard his voice and his demand, I just burst out in tears. It just broke my heart. And to hear this father's suffering, to connect to his pain. And it may sound crazy, but one of the things that we can do to help with the healing process is we can acknowledge the pain, we can feel the pain, we can grieve for those who lost their lives in Paris, who have lost their lives today in Syria. We can grieve for the refugees, who are on their way to Europe and who don't make it, or who get sick, who get tired and weary. We can collectively feel their pain and bring a sense of love, bring a sense of peace and compassion to all those who are suffering. We can breathe in their suffering and breathe out to them a sense of peace, a deep sense of love. Now, of course, to work in this way, to meet others in this way, again, we have to be willing to be courageous. We have to be willing to step out of our minds, to let go of our political beliefs, to let go of any ideas of what we think should or should not happen, or what is right and what is wrong. And we have to be willing to come into our hearts. And when I come into my heart, in this moment, when I come into my heart and I ponder this question, in my heart, I see the young men, the young Islamist, fundamentalist, terrorists holding their guns. I see the European politicians fighting amongst themselves. I see the parties in the United States with their wars and their arguments. I see the children suffering. I feel the tremendous pain of it all. As I breathe it in, into the openness of my heart, I feel it begin to transform and change. And I think what the world needs now is not more bombs and people with ideologies and people with this political belief or that political belief, thinking of ways of how to destroy each other. But I think we need big hearts who are willing to breathe in the pain and breathe out love, as difficult as that may be. I can even admit in a ironic way that I grew up in a military family, and that when I see something that as crazy as the pain that's on the news, and someone's willing to walk into a crowd and blow themselves up and kill other young people, there are thoughts that occasionally arise in my mind, from my condition that says, yes, we should go bomb the hell out of them. But when I take a deep breath and I stand back and look at the situation and notice where are the bombs falling, and the bombs aren't necessarily falling on isolated military bases with only bad people in them. The bombs are falling on neighborhoods and towns with good people in them, confused people, suffering people, and yes, also deranged people. Deranged in that they're deeply confused, deeply in pain, and such pain and suffering that they're willing to strap explosives to their body and walk into a crowd and blow themselves up. I mean, my God, I couldn't imagine that level of pain. And so when I feel into this, there's a willingness in me to breathe in that suffering, breathe in that pain. In Buddhism, they speak about, the energy of a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is one who is willing to breathe in someone else's pain, breathe in their suffering, and to send them love. And so in this day and age, I think we need more bodhisattvas and less bombs, and less bombs. And so in this last question, that I'd like to address, and I think I've gotten to it for the most part, but it says, "Dear Craig, I've read many of your Facebook posts about remaining peaceful in this time of war, and I must admit I am angered. It seems as if we need to respond with war. Can you explain what you mean by contemplation and action? Can you speak about this?" And I spoke about this a lot tonight, but and this doesn't have to just necessarily, it doesn't necessarily just apply, to acts of violence or acts of war. Contemplation and action is something that we do for everything. If we're going to be engaged in life, if we're going to be a part of this world, if we're going to be a part of the positive evolution of this planet, it means we must be willing, again, to drop out of our mind, to let go of our ideas, to let go of our reactivity, to come into our heart and ask our heart in an intuitive sense, how shall I respond? And can we listen to the voice of God in us to tell us how shall we go forward? And again, I fully understand. If I was in France right now, I would be angered. I find myself actually angered here in the United States at what's happened. It's just crazy, the pain that goes on in this world. But we all add to this pain to some degree or another because we are all connected, because we all have the same consciousness, the same mind. We are all connected through unity and are truly, in the most absolute sense, we are not separate from each other. And so when we get angry at our mother-in-law, when we get angry at the person who's driving slow in front of us, when we get angry at the store clerk, when we get angry at our husband or our brother or our sister, we are adding to the pain and suffering in the world. But when we are willing to come into our heart and forgive those who have wronged us, when we're willing to stand up for ourselves and set clear, loving boundaries, when we're willing to speak our truth in a loving and proactive way, when we're willing to be compassionate to someone who says mean things about us, when we're willing to take the time to listen to another, to listen to their argument, to try to understand them, then this is contemplation in action. And this can be in regards to everything from our diet, just to notice like what I eat and how that affects the world, to how I speak with my husband or wife, to whether I'm willing to slow down and let someone cross the street. Or can we contemplate deeply? And by contemplate, I don't mean we ask our mind. Because when you ask your mind, you just get a repetition of the past. You get a repetition of your conditioning. If I ask my old conditioned mind that grew up in a military family, how should you respond to a terrorist? The answer is quick. You send them hell from above. When I was a young kid, my father had this toolbox and had these bumper stickers on it. And it was all these military sayings. It was saying, you send them hell from above, you bomb them. And so if I ask my mind, I could come up with an answer like that. But if I ask my heart says there must be another way. Can we send love? Again, whether it's to your wife or to someone who wants to kill you. Of course, if someone has a gun, and they're close by all means run, defend yourself, take good care of yourself, duck, fight back, do what you need to do. That's wise. But if we want our world to change, we must find another way. Another way. I was reading something from the spiritual teacher Adam Bucko, and if any of you know, he's a part of the Christian ashram movement. He lives in New York City, and he works with homeless youth. And actually met him a number of weeks ago at the Science and Non-Duality Conference. And he has this beautiful quote, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit tonight. It relates directly to what I'm speaking about. One of the things he said is that if I can quote him here, heartbreak takes us into a place that transforms us and empowers us to give all that we have. And if we're honest, we're all broken in some way. And that's from Adam Bucko. And so one of the things about being a deeply spiritual person is a willingness to allow our heart to be fully open all the time. Now this teaching on allowing our heart to be fully open all the time is actually in direct opposition to how our egoic nature is wired. So our ego is a psychological program, a psychological force within us that seeks pleasure and avoids pain. It has no desire to have an open heart. It has a desire to defend itself. And of course, if you're in a war zone, an ego is a great thing to have. It's a great thing to have. If you live where I live and, you're out in the back country and you walk into a cave and you smell cat pee, which I did once. And it wasn't, like a little kitty cat. It was a cat pee of a mountain lion, and you see a pile of bones. Your ego will tell you, exit the cave quickly and slowly. Quickly and silently, as to not draw any attention to yourself. And I found myself once, I'm on a long hike, and I walked in this cave, and it smelled like, cat pee, and there's piles of bones. And so my ego lit up right away, and it said, get the hell out of there. And I did. And so I'm alive to tell the story. But back to, what I was saying about allowing your heart to be open. If we're really going to be awake in this world in an engaged way, it means we must be willing to open our hearts to the experience of everything, to all beings without exception, all experiences without exception. And when you open your heart, you'll feel the pain of others. You'll feel the heartache of others. But if you continue walking forward into the heartache with a sense of openness and trust, what you'll find is that you may grieve, you may cry. There may be voices which scream and shout within you. But as you continue to open to that pain, your heart will in fact break open and break open again and again and again. Adam, he ends what he's saying. If we're all honest, we're all broken. And there's the truth in that is that, yes, in our humanity, there's a part of us which feels wounded, which feels hurt, which is suffering. But in my experience, as you open your heart to your own suffering, as you're willing to feel the pain of your own woundedness, of your own brokenness, if you give yourself permission to have a good cry and allow the emotion to tremble and shake out of your body, your heart will break open, and it will break open into an experience of unity, of openness. It will break open into this experience of an incredible intimacy, an intimacy with all of life. It will break open into something which, in a deep way, cannot be destroyed, cannot be harmed. And so there's a funny thing that happens as through this experience of us being willing to embrace our heartache, through us being willing to embrace the heartache of others, the suffering of this world, we discover this incredible intimacy with all of life. It's such a paradoxical thing to experience this, to open to this. It seems, from an egoic perspective, our mind may ask, how would it be possible? If I open to pain, I will just feel pain, is, what our ego says. But if we're willing to listen to our heart, to open to our heart, our heart is a presence of intimacy. It's a presence of unity. There's no division in the heart. No division between you and life, between you and another. The great Zen master Dogen, he called this the intimacy with the 10,000 things. And it comes about through a willingness to allow our heart to break open, to feel and experience a unity and a oneness with all of life. It requires a courageousness within us to allow our egoic walls to drop. In the Christian tradition, they call this the Sacred Heart of Jesus. The Sacred Heart of Jesus, when you see a picture of Jesus like this, you see his bare chest. And in his heart is this flame of love, this flame of divinity. And it's a fierce flame. A flame that's not afraid of any experience, and not afraid of walking into the eyes of suffering, into the eyes of pain. It's not afraid to kneel down and hold someone who's suffering. And so again, if our world is going to change, if we are going to change, if we are going to grow and evolve out of an egoic consciousness, one of the doorways we must walk through is the doorway of heartbreak, doorway of sadness, the doorway of grief. And for most of us, if we just walk into it, we feel pain and then we want to retreat back out of that pain. But there's a deeper truth that can come if we walk through that pain fully and fully grieve the pain and allow that pain to release from our being. What we will find is we will find ourselves transformed. And as we transform ourselves, the world around us will begin to transform. And that will happen in a huge way, and it's already happening. The world is changing, it is transforming. And it will happen on a grand scale, and it'll also happen on a small scale. When you meet your partner with love, if you find yourself arguing with your partner and you choose to drop your argument and just to simply listen to them, you're willing to forgive them, meet them with peace and meet them with love, your relationship changes and the world around you benefits. And so I want to thank you, Adam Bucko, for this great quote that I found of yours. Okay. So now I'm going to shift gears a little bit here, and I got some questions about working with our personal humanity. And, I get this question almost every day as well, and I get it in numerous ways. And so I made it, I changed the question just to make it really clear, because people send me this question with really long stories. They say, how can I get rid of my egoic nature and all the pain within me? So you can't get rid of your egoic nature. You can't. The ego is part of being human. It's part of being human. Like I was describing earlier, when I walked into the cave where the mountain lion had lived, and I saw the stacks of, it was elk bones, elk vertebrae. I saw just like piles of them. It was very helpful for me to have my ego in that moment. I'm thankful for my ego. I'm thankful for all the times that it has protected me from harm. To live without an ego would be to live without some level of instinct within you. It tells you when to fight and when to run. And so it's not that we need to get rid of our ego, but our ego absolutely can be transformed. And I like to think of it in terms of percentages, in the sense that, if we're completely entranced by our mind, if we're completely lost in our egoic nature, then our ego, it leads us all the time. And most people live in this way. They live with an overactive ego, an ego which is out of control, which it guides their every reaction. And so when you live in this way, you experience tremendous suffering. And so most of the people, when they're asking me this question, they're basically saying, what can I do to help my ego calm down? And the big thing we can do Well, there's two big things. One is to not listen to it, not listen to the story that arises with our ego. Just to not pay any attention to it at all. None at all. When I walk into a room and there's a big flat screen TV on the wall and Donald Trump is screaming his politics, I pay him absolutely no attention. None. I don't get involved in his politics. And I could say the same about Hillary Clinton, or Mr. Putin. I don't pay attention to his politics. I don't get involved with it. I don't believe their politics, and I don't argue with their politics. I pay it no attention. I rest in my own peace, in the own space of my awareness. And so the question is how do I get rid of my ego? What if you just rested in your own space of awareness? What if you rested in your deep presence of innocence? How would your life be then? Even in this moment, if you connect to this overwhelming outpouring of innocence, which is looking out of your eyes right now, what's your life like? What's your experience like? Can you open to this? And see, when you open to this, ego disappears. It falls out of consciousness. It doesn't have any job to do. Now, the next question I got was, I'm struggling with abusive and neglectful parents. I have to go see them for the holidays. Do you have any guidance? And so I said, there's two parts to this teaching. One, you don't listen to the ego. Which means you don't listen to other people's egos and you don't listen to your own ego. So you don't listen to Donald Trump's politics and you don't listen to your own politics. You let it all die in the vast presence of your own beauty and innocence. So that's the first place we can start. And my God, if you're willing to do that, you'll find that most of your problems just disappear. Now, if there's deeper pain that comes forward, and the second teaching is to, whatever comes forward, you meet it fully with love. An unconditional, loving, and compassionate presence. And so this person, they wrote me a long email. They said, I'm going back to see my parents for the holidays. I won't go into all the details about how their parents mistreat them. I think most of us know this experience, fairly well to a greater or lesser degree. But if there's a place within you, a wounded place, a hurting place, a broken place, and you walk into your parents' house and they criticize you, or they're judgmental, can you, one, not listen to what your parents say and let it roll off your back like water rolls off the back of a duck? And two, if it does affect you, can you breathe into your own pain? Can you breathe into your sadness? Can you meet your own sadness with a presence of love? Can you be willing to speak to yourself though in the ways in which you would hope your parents would speak to you? If your parents say, oh, you really need to change your job and go into this different career because what you're doing right now is not working, and I think it's not going to lead anywhere. Or your parents say you need to leave this relationship that you're in, or you need to try harder in life, whatever parents say. I don't know what all these things that parents say to their kids criticizing them. To me, it seems absolutely ridiculous as a parent. I have two kids, two young kids, and well, actually one's a baby and one's 14, so she's not that young, but why would we criticize our children? Why would we add that kind of suffering to the world? The only reason we would do that is because we ourselves are in pain. You have to be in a tremendous amount of pain to criticize your own children, to be judgmental towards your children. Oftentimes I find that the things that parents say, it's things that they've done that have worked for them, and they're projecting it onto their kids. I'm a banker and it served me well, and so you should be a banker instead of being a doctor because bankers, it's a safe job or whatever. Again, the parent is just projecting what they think is going to be beneficial to the child. But when we're adults, we can choose whether or not to listen to our parents. We can choose whether or not to allow this to affect us. But if the pain and the wound is so deep within us that it just automatically affects us, again, can we breathe into that pain? Can we breathe into that heartache? Can we meet it with a sense of love? And can we be the very parent that we never had? Can we speak to ourselves in a way which we wish our parents would speak to us? And of course, then the third thing is if they don't stop their criticism, if they're just toxic people to be around, then by all means, if you're an adult, you don't have to be with them. You can choose. Say, okay, I don't need this in my life anymore. I don't need this craziness and this insanity. And that's okay. You don't need to feel bad about it. Or that you're, a bad kid or child or an adult or son or daughter or whatever it is. You can just say, okay, these people are crazy and I don't need them in my life. I don't need them anymore. And sometimes that's the highest path for us to walk. And so again, the question is, can we ask our heart how to respond? Before you cut your parents completely out of your life because they're not perfect. Ask your heart, how shall I respond? Can I hang out with my parents for 2 days over Thanksgiving or Christmas or Hanukkah or New Year's or whatever it is? Can I hold their hand while they're dying in a nursing home? Can I meet them with a sense of love and forgiveness? Can I do my own healing work so that it's easier for me to love and forgive my parents or my spouse or child or whatever it is, whoever it is that we need to forgive? And can I allow this healing to take place through me, through connecting to my greater divinity, first and foremost? It's very hard to heal yourself if you're lost in your own egoic nature and trying to use your own ego to heal your ego. That's very much what happens in the therapy room and the psychological room, is that in the psychological space is oftentimes it's one ego trying to heal another ego. And sometimes that works to some degree, to a greater or lesser degree. And the way I work with individuals, we first open to our own divinity, to our own goodness. And from this place of goodness, this place of strength, this place of compassion, we meet our evolving edge with love, with peace, with compassion. Give ourselves permission to be human, to have a good cry, to grieve, to be angry, to let whatever emotion that's holding us back to release from our being. All the while, we're fully acknowledging our own peace, our own divinity, our own goodness. And so, yeah, if you go back for the holidays, you see your parents, they say something rude to you, it's okay to go into the bathroom, have a good cry, take a deep breath, say some loving and kind words to yourself, come out, eat dinner with your parents, do your best to forgive them for being old and obnoxious. Say loving, kind things to them. And then when dinner is over, you hang out for a little bit and then go back home. But of course, it's a very personal question. You must ask your own heart, what's the way for you? Okay. Here's a question I got from one of my good friends in New York. Said, Craig, my main concern at the moment is that I have this stagnant energy that persists in my body. I've tried to investigate it and do some inquiry with it. It seems like old emotional stuff that doesn't know how to leave the system. Any ideas how I can get this energy moving again? So, yeah, a lot of us have this experience of resistance when we're on the spiritual path. And so, working with resistance can be a very tricky thing, a difficult thing. And so if we're really mindful of resistance, what we'll find is that we often have a way of how should I say this, how we respond or how we don't respond to resistance. So some of us, when we find resistance within us, we go asleep. Like we literally fall asleep. Sometimes we go and we reach for food. Sometimes, we surf the internet. And so, of course, if you're mindful and you notice that, if you're conscious about what's going on within you, you notice, okay, every time I think about my mother, I want to go to Dunkin' Donuts and eat some donuts. We say, all right, well, maybe I don't need to be doing that. Maybe I should do the opposite of that. And so what does the opposite of that look like? It looks very much like what I was just describing a couple minutes ago. Can I sit quietly with this resistance? Can I feel into it? Can I just first fully acknowledge that it's here? That, oh yeah, it feels as if there's a wall of resistance within my heart, within my belly, within my legs, wherever it is. And in a very inquisitive way, can I get to know the resistance? Can I ask it, what do you want? What do you need? How can I help you? How can I serve you? What is it you truly want? And normally it'll tell you like a surface level desire, like I want to eat some more donuts, or I want to run away, or get away from me, this is too painful. But if you feel deeper, just ask the question again, what is it you really need? What is it you truly need? Oftentimes we'll hear the words, unconditional love. I need acceptance. And so in a very intimate way, can we be willing to open our hearts to this resistance? Can we be willing to open our hearts to this pain? Can we be willing to open our hearts to this sadness? Or sometimes what we find that resistance is covering up a deep truth within us. I've worked with a lot of people and worked with these real deep layers of resistance. And sometimes as we're opening to them, someone would say something like, I've always wanted to sing. And it's like, oh, wow, where did that come from? And they say, oh, when I was a little child, I always wanted to sing, but my mother told me I had a terrible voice. And so I just covered this desire up within me. And I would say, oh, no, sweetheart, you can't cover this up any longer. We've brought it to the light. Can you give yourself permission to sing? Can you take a singing class? Can you sing in the shower? Can you join a singing group? Can you join a band or a church choir? So often we think of resistance as bad. But if we look at it, even like, say, the desire for food, if that's coming up in a form of resistance, if we look at that, we look, what is deeper than that? Or what do we get when we're eating the food? For most of us, we get some level of comfort. And so can we breathe in a heavenly comfort and let that comfort descend into our being? Can we open to this greater divinity and breathe in a sense of peace, a nurturing energy? Can we breathe it in to this place within us, which thinks it wants a donut or another piece of pizza? Can we breathe in this energy of loving, compassionate support and allow that energy of comfort to pour into whatever feeling of pain or sadness is within us? And as that nurturing energy comes into us, it begins to work on that pain. It begins to transform that pain. And as we're doing this work, oftentimes childhood memories come forward. Sadness comes forward. Heartache, maybe rage comes forward. And can we stand with the clear light of our awareness and see all those experiences one by one and allow them to release from our being? And this is where a lot of people get confused, is they don't stand in their clear light of awareness. The pain comes forward and they get lost in pain. But one thing is for certain, is if we're going to get far in the spiritual path, we have to find a deep inner stability within ourselves. And so for some of us, inner stability comes in the form of us focusing and concentrating on our breath, identifying with the resiliency of our breath, the quietness of our breath, the spaciousness of our breath, the strength. And I'll even use this word, the gentle repetition of our breath. And by that I mean our breath that comes and goes and comes and goes, and it doesn't stop, because if it stopped, we'd be dead. But a willingness to come just into this deep inner stillness. And from this deep inner stillness, the pain is welcome to arise and it's welcome to leave. We don't have to leave the stillness. We can include the pain within the space of the stillness, but we don't need to get lost in the pain. And so I think it's important, to deeply investigate all these things within us. So often what I find with a lot of the students that I work with is they'll have an experience of pain, and the first thing they want to do is get rid of it, ignore it, deny it, think it's somehow bad. And I always say, let's slow down. Let's look at this pain. What is in this pain? What does this pain have to teach us? What does it have to show us? Is there a truth buried in this pain? Can we slow down enough to breathe into the pain and perhaps find a great truth, a great source of strength, perhaps an aspect of ourselves which we have forgotten, which is in this pain? I mean, one thing is for certain. For any of us, whenever we embrace pain, we always become stronger and more confident in our own innate divinity. So to me, pain is one of the greatest teachers, the most valuable teachers. Okay. Let me just scan the emails. I think I answered a lot of the other questions. One of the things about getting far on the spiritual path is a willingness to be completely flexible in how we meet ourselves. Being completely innocent in relationship to our assumptions. Because like I was saying a couple minutes ago, it's easy to look at pain and just say, this is bad, and run from it. But if we can bring an innocent curiosity, and what my teacher used to call a universal friendliness to whatever our experience is, what I have found is that we can learn so much from whatever it is that's arising within us. Whether we're having a disagreement with a boss, an argument with our teenage son or daughter, whether we're struggling with a food addiction, a drug addiction, an alcohol addiction. If we can meet our addiction, if we can meet our pain and our struggle from this place of universal friendliness, if we can look at it just for a couple moments to say, I actually don't know what this is or why this is happening. If we can approach it more as if it's a great mystery, if we can give ourselves permission to allow our heart to break open into this mystery, what we will find is great truths are buried within us. And so I invite us all to go forward in this way. And whether it's how shall we respond to global terrorism, global inequality, how shall we respond to environmental disaster and devastation, to what shall I eat for dinner? And what impact does my food and my diet have on this world? To how shall I respond to my partner in a loving, kind way? Whatever it is that our evolving edges, can we bring our heart into the discussion? Can we let go of our pain from the past and invite our heart to lead us? Can we open to God and allow the grace of God, the beauty and the intelligence of God to live through us as us? Can we meet life in this way? And so these are our questions of contemplation. So I want to thank everyone for sending these emails in. I'd like to end with a short prayer sent in to me from my friend Julie in Ireland. And after the short prayer, we'll do a short meditation. I'll have some closing comments. And so Julie sent me this prayer. It's a beautiful prayer. It's from, it's funny, Julie's in Ireland and I'm here in Colorado, and she sent me a a prayer from the Navajo people, and the Navajos, they live in my community. They're my neighbors, and in a sense, I live in their land, because this where I live was once owned by the Navajos. So the prayer starts, Great Spirit, may we walk in beauty. May beauty be above us so that we may dream of beauty. May beauty be in front of us so that we are led by beauty. May beauty be to the left of us so that we may receive beauty. May beauty be to the right of us so that we may give out beauty. May beauty be behind us to those who come after us may see beauty. May beauty be inside of us so that we might become beauty. Great Spirit, may we walk together in beauty. And so I invite you to close your eyes. And can you connect to your own beauty? And by that I mean I invite us all to open to this deep feeling of aliveness. This wonderful feeling of inner light and vitality. Can you open to this overwhelming feeling of goodness and radiance in your own heart? Can you allow your breath to slow and deepen with deep belly breaths? And as you breathe in, you can feel the welling up of radiance and of beauty in your belly, in your lower hara. In your sacrum and pelvis. Can you open to the vastness and spaciousness and brilliance of your own mind? And simultaneously, can you open to this greater light, a heavenly light to descend into you? Can you open to the realm of receiving the goodness and purity of divine grace? Can you receive the love of the Holy Spirit within your own heart, within your mental and emotional world. Can you allow your mind and your emotional nature to be surrendered into this greater divinity? To be transformed by this greater light. Can you allow every aspect of yourself to open to and surrender into this greater divinity? Can you allow this light to shine out to all the world? To the soldiers and civilians, to the refugees and those fleeing conflict, to those suffering, to those who are deluded by their own ideology and confused by their own pain. Can their hearts also be transformed? To those who lost loved ones this last week, can they also be blessed by this light and love? To those of us struggling with inner conflict, emotional pain, sadness in relationships with their parents, their husband, their wives, their children, or workplace conflicts. Can we invite this love and this light into our lives, into their lives? So that one day we may see the truth that Jesus spoke of, that the kingdom of heaven is here upon earth. Can we continue to wake up to this divinity in greater and greater ways? This is our prayer for ourselves and for all of this world. I want to close by thanking you all for joining me this evening or this morning, whatever time it is where you're at. Again, I feel deeply honored. I want to thank you so much for joining me. May you be blessed with light and love, happiness and joy. So thank you so much. And until next time, may we go together in peace. Take good care.